I'm Santosh, coming from CSR CCMB Hyderabad. I've been doing my PhD over here. Even though, as rightly said, that these are unprecedented times where we have to adapt to what comes on our way right now. So one of the major challenges is how do we get out of this pandemic and what do we do as an institute, as a research, as an individual, as a country. So there are many questions, many layers of complexities because our demography is huge and the questions are unimaginable. But however, for every question there is an answer provided we put it in a correct, proper way. So taking this forward, so firstly, I would like the organizers, thank the organizers for this opportunity to talk about what we have been doing at CCMB. So I wouldn't be able to cover most of what we are doing, but I would be stressing on two important initiatives which have been helping us, and soon we are going to revolutionize testing in this India. Okay, to begin with, what a research institute can actually do. So why should we do? The thing is, why should research institutes do? They are meant for research. Why should they get into a pandemic and diagnostics and all? So first thing is we have an infrastructure, so huge infrastructure, the machines required for testing and all. Next thing is we are very well equipped with basic sciences. We do know how virus replicates, how things work, and what are the ways of finding out, and the questioning ability. So one of the unique thing of any research institute is they keep questioning what is on the way. Like, are we on the right way? Are we asking right questions? Why this is happening so? If something is happening, why is it so? What is the basis, scientific basis of something? And the next one is innovation. Since you know things deeply, there is an ability for you to tweak things and try to improve upon existing things. And the third thing is dealing with unexpected things. So more often we come across many situations where while we are studying something, all of a sudden it just doesn't fall into place, and which altogether open up new things. And these are unexpected findings. So we are known to handle unexpected things, and there's always a pressure associated with it, and which we are trained to do it. And the third and the last one is enthusiasm. So the most important thing is you need the enthusiasm. You need that enthusiasm to go and try different things, do different things, and there's lots of patience needed, perseverance needed for doing these things. So these are the things which actually qualify and will tell why we should be getting involved into the fight of COVID-19. So this is what we look at as an institute, as an individual, is once in a lifetime opportunity. So this is the time where you put out your best and show what you can do the system, because we have been trained for so many years. Governments are funding us, governments are people. It's at the end of the day public money, and today the entire nation is at stress. So what we can contribute as an individual, as an institute, and as a nation. So there are multiple things which we can do. So what are the possible roles? You can support the healthcare workers, that is doing diagnosis for being, helping to generate more equipment, like designing new equipment. Next is understand the biology of the virus. That will help us to design drugs, or also repurposing. Repurposing means already existing drugs, you use it for something else. The next thing is vaccine generation, where we need to actually grow the virus and then try whether something is working or not. Even for drug, whether a drug is working or not, you have to check whether the virus is able to grow in the presence of the drug. And the last one is innovation in testing methods. Since research institutes are involved, innovations are part and parcel of it. So these things are the possible roles which a research institute can actually play. But while doing these things, what are things to deal with? What all we do, if you know. So here is an image where you can see the green dots are nothing but the virus particles, and the rest of the oranges things are the cells on which the virus is actually going and sitting and attacking the cells. These are colored, but actually they're not colored. Don't worry about it. So going further, what are these uh, things which we can deal with? One is diagnosis. So as you all know, the country did not have enough diagnostic centers. Initially, all the samples were sent to Pune, NIV, National Institute of Virology. That is, uh, I mean, it cannot handle beyond a point. We have around 130 crores, and it's just not possible one or two diagnostic centers to take up this role. The second part is surveillance. So unless you know what is the spread of the disease, you cannot do measures to control the spread of the disease. And the third part is new normalcy. Now you have to set up standard operating protocols. So they are totally new things now. How do we operate in these conditions? How offices open? How do we do testing? So no one knows anything how to deal with these. So you have to test new things, write down SOPs for everything, and start circulating. And the last one, which is very, very important, is communication. The entire world is in panic mode. You should communicate what you're finding new. You should communicate what you're improving day-to-day basis. You have to communicate it to public. You have to communicate it to policymakers. You have to also convey the media. And in this process, we also have something which totally pops up wrong information. These all have to be dealt one after the other. So to do all these things, what is very important is the human strength. So where do we get that from? So here is a one of the articles which was recently written by one of our colleagues from IISc. So it's the researchers who have been driving this movement in India, at least at CCMB. So what we did is initially when this entire pandemic thing had come up, so we wanted to start testing. CSIR CCMB, the first institute to start actually testing in India. And the first thing which we did is we circulated a Google form saying that enthusiastic volunteers, let's join the battle. So we are a student around 150 or 130 PhD students, and 107 students joined the battle, and they are our bench strength, they are our volunteers. And these are very, very important guys because they know how to do things. We are familiar, we are know to do things, how to do an RT-PCR. RT-PCR is actually the gold standard in testing, and most of the research institutes uh, do have an RT-PCR, and all the guys in the research institute know how to do an RT-PCR. That's a big, big strength to start off because you know the science behind it, you know how to do it. It's only about adapting to the new conditions with new protocols that will some safety, safer protocols. So volunteers are the ones which are actually moving this entire fight against COVID-19. So this is you can wearing a PPE suit, sitting inside. So this is just 2 3 snapshots of how it is inside the BSL-3. So you are fully covered. You are covered with a mask and everything. So it's a day in and day out effort by all these guys. So therefore, it's very important that you should have that enthusiasm. You should have that dedication to do things. So this is with respect to students. But as an institute, what we have been trying to do, we had few important goals set in our way. That is, first thing is we didn't have labs in India. So first, we should increase the capacity. So how do we increase the capacity? Is by training others. We should train other institutes. We should train hospitals. We should train the technical staff there so that they go back to their place and set up the lab. The next thing is validation. So validation is like any kit cannot be used for testing, right? So this, we have to validate it. Yes, it's actually good enough to be used for testing. Next thing is innovation. We want to bring in new ways of testing, easier, simpler, cheaper, because there's a huge problem with respect to supply chain. And in this also, we have to also do some research where we are actually studying the genome of the virus and trying to see is it mutating, is there anything new emerging. So those things have to be followed very carefully and also understand the basic balance. Nothing is known much about this virus. So we are trying to do that as well. And the last one is viral cultures, which are very, very, very important for doing drug testing as well as generating vaccines. So if you look at it, you cannot distance any one of these activities. So it means you need so many people to working day in and out to carry out each and every activity. And in CCME, that is the strength which we have. We have so many guys who are very enthusiastic to keep going behind this. So here, what we have done with respect to capacity building, initially there was absolutely not a single lab in Telangana where we can do testing. Initially, CCMB started out, and later on, it taught how to do it to Gandhi Hospital, some hospitals, and also some research institutes, CDFD, Center for DNA Fingerprinting and Diagnosis, Hyderabad Central University. So there are many other universities where CCMB was instrumental in helping them to set up the lab. So you can see from 0 we have gone to 9, and now it's actually much more than this. So how a general testing actually happens? I just wanted to give you this brief introduction of how testing happens. Because one of the biggest problem with testing right now is the time taken for testing is almost 24 hours. So you collect a swab and then put it in a VTM. So I thought I'll just show you guys. So this is a, can you all see me? Can someone answer?
Yes, sir.
Hello?
Yes, sir. We
Yeah.
can see
So
you.
here is a VTM. You can see this, right? Here is a VTM. So VTM is nothing but viral transport media. So you have to collect the swab. This is a nylon tip and this is a plastic. So you just put it inside into your nose, or there is also called oral collection. Take it out and you put it, place it in this VTM. So therefore, your
So the
entire
audio
viral
is
load
not
which is being
clear.
taken out from the oro or media. So this, hello, hello,
So the audio is not clear.
Hello.
hello. Is it
Hello.
clear now? Is it
Yes,
clear
sir.
now?
Yes, sir,
Thank
it's audible.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank
So
you.
this is the VTM, which is viral transport media, into which we put the swab. Swab is nothing but through which we collect the sample. So there are two types of sample collection. One is nasal swab collection, and another is oral, naso-oral. So these two are put in this liquid medium, and this is called viral transport medium. And then this media is packed, because this is a liquid. It will have infectious agent, and there is a possibility of leaking. So we pack it multiple layers, absorbed. We put cotton, we put tissue, so that even if there is a leakage, it is absorbed. Then you put it in a Ziploc cover. Then you put a parafilm around the neck, and then put absorbent. Then you put a Ziploc cover. So they're multi-layer packing. After these are packed, then you ship to the testing center, because you know that we do not have many testing centers. You will be take collecting samples in some village, and you have to ship it all the way to the city, which is almost 120 kilometers away. So you have to pack these samples very, very nicely so that they don't leak. And we have come across cases where there is a sample leakage and technical staff are infected actually. So once they come to the lab, we also have to unpack them. Now we have to test, right? We have to unpack. So there is a lot of time consumption in packing and unpacking. And after that, we do something called RNA isolation. I mean, I hope that most of you all are familiar with RNA and DNA, which is a genetic material. For this virus, it's an RNA virus, which is a genetic material. So we isolate the RNA and then do something called RT-PCR. So RT-PCR is actually the gold standard. So RT-PCR is actually the gold standard technique, which can detect viral loads, even very, very 10 copies of it, it can detect. So it's very, very, very sensitive, 10 to 100. That's what the range is given. So early infections can be detected only by RT-PCR. That's why it is very known as gold standard method. However, once you isolate the RNA, you have to look for it. 10 copies, you cannot see it with the naked eye, then we amplify it using a polymerase chain reaction. I hope that most of you are familiar with. In any case, what is polymerase chain reaction is nothing but the number of copies increase exponentially because of the addition of primers and the DNA. So you can see in cycle 1 they have become 4, in cycle 2 they will become 8, in cycle 3 they'll become 8 power 2. So it keeps on and on. It goes in the 2 power 3, 2 power 4, 2 power 5. So it keeps exponentially increasing number of copies. So once the signal is amplified, that is what we detect. Because the number of copies are low, we cannot detect. So that is the reason we put a step called polymerase chain reaction, which increases the total this DNA RNA content. So RNA is converted to DNA, and that's what we read for. The entire signal is amplified, and that is what we are looking for. And how do we probe for it? We are not running a gel, what you guys generally do it in your lab. You run an agarose gel to find out whether the DNA is there or no. But here we use something called real-time PCR, where we look for whether there is an amplification or no. So what we do is, so this is, you can see here, this is the first step. If there is a double-stranded DNA, so it is denatured and you get two strands. And there is another primer which is called probe, which binds here, which is attached on one side with fluorophore and the other side with a quencher. So if you can see this, whenever they are attached with a solid line, it means they are covalently linked to each other, so there won't be any fluorescence. But once they detach from this, this line is broken, right? Once there is a detachment, then this fluorophore becomes active because the quencher is no more along with it. So that's what we look for. So whenever there is a polymerase chain reaction, so the DNA polymerase comes and starts synthesizing the new strand. In the process, the proofreading domain of it just cleaves this green part, and therefore it will start fluorescing. So this is how, the more the amplification, the more the fluorescence. So these curves represent actually fluorescence if they appear before, very well before in earlier cycles, it means the viral load is less. If the amplification happens at the end, it means the viral load is less. Nevertheless, the detection is based on a probe,
Hello,
and
sir.
that's why we call it as
Excuse me.
real time. They are actually, yeah, yeah, hello.
Sir, sir, the voice is breaking.
Hello.
The voice is breaking in between.
Even now?
Not now, but mm,
Even
yes,
now?
sir. But sometimes it's breaking.
Okay, 1 minute. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. You just stop me when then and there itself whenever the voice breaks. Okay.
So now the voice broke. Yes, sir.
Hello.
Hello. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So yeah. Yeah. So so this is a way of detecting the viral, whether the virus is there in the sample or not. So what are the limitations and what are the problems associated with the RT-PCR based technique which we are using right now? So the problem is the VTM is a liquid because of which there will be a leakage and there is a possibility of many healthcare workers and the guys who are actually testing will be exposed to these VTMs, infectious agent, and there is a possibility of these getting infected. The second thing is this is highly time consuming. You pack multiple layers and then you unpack, so it takes lots of time. The third thing is I have shown you on an RNA isolation step, which is takes almost 3 hours for just 100 samples, and you need 4 people to doing this job. So, and the fourth one is we do not have enough supply of kits initially. Right now, we are doing better, but initially we did not have this supply of kits. And overall time taken for 100 sample, it takes at least 10 hours with 12 people working in a facility. So you can look at the problems in it, and just for 100 sample, if you take this, imagine the problem in the context of India. The number of people are so many, and the number of testing labs are so less, and the number of people who can actually do this work, who have the technical expertise, are also less. So this begs for a solution which is much easier, much clearer. And as we know, we call something for Indian type jugaad, or what do you call it as? So where we tweak things. So one of the easiest ways, what if we get rid of this VTM? If you remove the liquid, there is no packing issues, less packing, there is no leakage issue, then it will become safer. The next thing is the moment you remove a liquid entity, then your packing goes down. There is no possibility of leaking. Yes. Then unpacking. So if your packing is less, then your unpacking is also going to be easier. And the third step, which is the most labor intense and time consuming, is the RNA isolation. So we thought, okay, is there a possibility of getting rid of all these 3 steps? One is VTM, next is RNA isolation, and the third one is can we reduce the packing and unpacking time in all together? What we thought initially is we remove all this instead of putting it in a VTM. Let's say we put it in an empty tube. So this is an empty tube. Instead of putting in a VTM, if you just place your sample in this, and since it's a solid, there is no possibility of leakage. Yes. While and all. Since it's a solid, you need not put multiple layers. There is no leakage problem. And the third point is, yeah, sure. Yeah. So the easiest way is, can we remove VTM from the process? Can we remove RNA isolation? Then we thought, yes, it's quite doable. What we did is, instead of putting all this, we just put something called T buffer. You all know about T buffer, the stress EDTA buffer in which we resuspend DNA, RNA. It's a very, very cheapest chemical available in the lab, very, very cheap. So we replaced VTM. So you collect a dry swab, just collect it and put it in a tube and ship it to the place of testing. There, when it arrives, you just had around 500 microliter, 0.5 ml of T buffer, and directly use that for RT-PCR. So that's what we did. And this is, I'm just showing you all how it is actually done. So this is where it is. So when we tested the new method, which is on the left side, was more efficient compared to the one which is on the right side, which is being currently used. So out of 15 samples in the right side, which is the current method being used throughout the country, is says that 7 are positive out of 14. But in the new method, what we show is actually 8 are positive out of 7. So indicating that it's not only easier, cheaper, and also the accuracy of this testing is more. So this was just surprising for us, because what we realize is we are actually missing few positive samples because of the low sensitivity of the test. And no test is 100%. Just always keep this in mind. that no testing in diagnosis is going to be 100%. So we do not have ideal testing methods. However, this was promising, but this was surprising for us because we have removed entirely VTM, we removed RNA isolation steps. So when you simplify the steps so less, you're still, the method is effective in getting positives. And this was, got validated it actually with some neighboring institute called Center for DNA Fingerprinting and Diagnosis, CDFD Hyderabad, as well as from Odisha, the ICER Behrampur. So both, all the three institutes have actually validated this method. So why is it this so uh, good for the system? Because what all it can do. One is we have removed VTM fully. There is no liquid at all. Next is faster because there is no liquid. The packaging is less. Next is there is no RNA isolation. Hence, there is a 3R step removed fully. It's cheaper because you have replaced VTM with TE buffer and there is no RNA isolation kit at all. Next is earlier what I've shown is for 100 sample, it takes 10 hours, almost 10 hours with 12 people working, each working around 4 to 5 hours. So now the time taken for 100 sample is just 5 hours with 5 people working, same 3 to 4 hours. So this is a robust, and more importantly, since the time has reduced and the number of people required has reduced, the entire testing in the country can be increased threefold. Instead of doing 100, I'll do 200, 300 samples at a time because the number of steps are less, then the space required also will be less, the time will be less, everything goes down. So on the whole, how it goes is you collect the swab, it's the same old story, swab. Instead of swab, collecting it in a VTM, viral transport media, you just put it in an empty tube and you pack it. You don't need to pack extensively with a tape, with an absorbent, then with a Ziploc. Just pack it, just close the cap and put it in a Ziploc cover. That will do it. After that, when it arrives in the lab, add TE buffer, heat the sample for 98 degrees for 6 minutes, and directly use this sample for RT-PCR. Unlike the earlier step, here we used to have an RNA isolation step which takes almost 3 hours. So therefore, the entire time required for testing has come down. So this is still RT-PCR based, but it is much easier, much safer, much cheaper, and much robust in terms of doing more and more testing. So therefore, we believe that this is a change which is going to totally revolutionize testing in India and increase the testing capacity by at least threefold in what we are testing today. Without increasing the infrastructure, you don't need a new equipment, you don't need more people. With the same setup, you can do 3 times more testing what you're doing today. So that's the whole advantage of the system. So the next thing is, so we put up all these results and published it very recently. It got accepted just 2 days back in Oxford University Press. We are very happy that it got accepted. And we have submitted this proposal to ICMR to implement nationwide. So we are just hoping that we'll get an approval as early as possible so that it will benefit the entire nation and we can do more testing. The moment you do more testing, there is a scope to control more and more. That's the whole idea of testing more. So this is one side of the story with respect to dry swab and how it is going to change things. We are just hopeful that ICMR will approve it as early as possible. And since it doesn't require anything new, it's going to be much faster adapted by labs. And we have already spoken to a few labs. They are very happy about this. There are a few labs that have already tested it. So we are very looking forward to implement this as early as possible. And then the overall impact on the system which it can produce is currently India is testing around 2 lakhs per day. If you estimate the amount of money, we are spending almost 30 crores and per month we are spending around 900 crores. Imagine which we can increase the capacity with the current method, which is not possible. We cannot increase the testing 3x capacity with the current method. If you imagine that you have increased, you are going to incur so much of expenditure on all this. But if with the new methodology, for 2 lakhs tests, you'll use only 7 crores, whereas per month you're going to spend only 210 crores. So you can see how much money we are going to save. At the same time, we can also do more number of tests, 3 times more tests compared to the normal testing, and also save a lot of money with the same amount, same capacity, 3 times more testing. So this is going to be a phenomenal contribution, at least to the society. We are just hoping that ICMR accepts or approves or validates our method as early as possible. So the center one is actually the new method, and the third column tells how much savings, and the fourth column is the comment, what all, what it's the general comment and how it's going to be affecting the overall process. So this is the impact of the new method which has been developed. We are happy that the scientific community has reviewed it and also accepted the paper, and it's going to be published in the 3 or 4 days. And the next thing, this is one major thing which we have done, and the next thing is with respect to, one is testing, but how do we do community surveillance? So since India is such a huge country and the population, we have a huge density of population, testing each and every person is just not possible. So you have to find ways where you test the community at once and look how the disease is spreading, and then put measures in place and now check how the disease, did it control or is it still continuing in the same way? It's not only for corona, for now it's corona. Once we set up such a kind of system, we can use this kind of system for any other disease in general. So any pandemic or any epidemic comes, this is what we can follow. So for this, there was a recent paper which showed that COVID particles, the coronavirus SARS-CoV-2 RNA was also seen in stool and sputum samples. So the moment you say stool, sputum samples, it means it is going to be in the drainage. It will going to be the wastewater sewage system. So now the idea is, you know, the water which we generate, the wastewater which we generate in our homes has to be treated. There is something called sewage treatment plants. So every state or every area has one sewage treatment plant. If you can actually go and collect the sewage there and check whether RNA is there in that or no. The moment you spot an RNA, you can find out, okay, this area is infected. Now, since we know how much is being excreted per person, we can also back calculate what is the extent of the spread, how many people are infected in this area. So if we can make that estimation, our ability to control the disease and our ability to monitor the way the disease is spreading, we can easily narrow down to the places where actually the hotspots are there and do better measures, and also check whether our measures are working or no much later. And since a person who is positive, I should mention one point here, even though these are seen in stool and sputum samples, the sewage is not, it's not infectious, because there's lots of all other things, it gets disintegrated, but you still find a few pieces of RNA, therefore it's not infectious. So this can be exploited for understanding the area's spread of COVID in that area, and also to analyze the situation and put measures, and also to see how the measures are actually working, whether it is doing good or bad. And each person who is positive, even though he tests negative after 14-15 days, people have shown that they will release RNA particles in their stool samples up to almost 37 to 47 days. So there's a wide range. So you can monitor a system for almost 30 days by sampling one area. So this is a huge advantage, and it is an ideal setup to monitor the entire community. And we have recently started a collaboration with our sister institute, Indian Institute of Chemical Technology, which is just next door to us. And we have actually collected few sewage samples. We are processing, and we have actually processed many of them. So the protocols are standardized. We have already some results, but we are analyzing the data. We'll be soon putting it out on our websites and all regarding the data. So it will take a week or so to actually tell what is the infection rate in Hyderabad at least. So we have done this analysis for Hyderabad. So this is another important contribution, which is important step to fight COVID-19 in an area. Once these are protocols set, this kind of studies can be done all throughout India and put measures in place so that how we can monitor each and every locality, how they are doing. Are they increasing? The virus load is decreasing. We can analyze many aspects. So that's how it's going to be. So we are very excited about this project, and we are keenly looking forward how we can actually use this data to do something more with respect to controlling the disease. And it's not only for COVID. For now, it's COVID, but later on we can use it for many other parasites. And other works which CCMB is doing is we have sequenced many genomes. I mean SARS-CoV-2 genomes, around 1,000 genomes have been deposited from India, So growing the virus is essential. So the right side image which is being shown is it's the media in which the cells are grown, and so the cells are infected with the virus, and that's how we track whether the virus is growing or no. And there also we do an RT-PCR to find out, and the cells also live, they just get blasted. The next is we need these cultures for testing antiviral compounds to check to generate virus, to check ELISA kits. We can develop ELISA kits. You take the viral particle, coat it on a plate, and then you check whether a person has developed antibody or not. If an antibody is there, it will go and bind to the plate, and then you can probe it whether the person has generated antibody or no. It tells whether he has been exposed for COVID or no. So these are very important things which are going on, and some understanding of the basic is how the virus is replicating, what are the host proteins it's using from the individual to replicate. And then more, the third point is with respect to kit validation. Since we are getting more and more new kits now, in India itself, we are getting many new companies which are generating kits, developing new kits. So those have to be validated. So CCMB is one of the validation center for all those things. And the last one is with respect to disinfection instruments. So now there are many instruments which are coming up, UV instruments in which you can put your mobile, you can put your wallet, everything, sanitize, sterilize them, UV radiate them. So there will be small devices. Those have to be validated. So there are many things which are being done right now in this. Other than this, communication, which is very important, one of the recent thing which happened, I just wanted to share with this, how dangerous sometimes things can go. So infodemic. So infodemic is just like a pandemic. The information is so huge, so humongous. Every day something new comes in. So many newspapers, so many channels, everything keeps reporting. So as an individual, any person in this community, at least this guy who understand the scientific basis of COVID and understand a little bit of it, should be looking for such information. If there is anything wrong, you should report it. That's an important point for all the researchers. And in the trending social media with respect to WhatsApp and all, this message is spread just like that. So those have to be taken care. So there are many kinds of news which comes up almost on a daily basis on WhatsApps for us. So we should be aware of what is correct, what is wrong. So we are actually communicating the unknown. We do not know much about it. So we have to be more careful when we are putting out a word, when we are telling something. What is any message which comes into your inbox with respect to COVID, ask for the resource. That's an important thing you should do as an educated person. As you know to read, write, right? So you need to do this as an individual whenever you're passing on a message to someone. If there is something wrong, stop, break the chain of the wrong information as well. That's a responsibility of every individual, which is very important for this crowd, I feel. And I would like to share an example. So there was an article in DC saying that CCMB claims discovery of a more virulent strain of COVID virus. We have never told this. CCMB has never told in any of the meeting, but this was just come up, and this has created lots of panic all around that the strain is more virulent. Now you can look at the death rate in India compared to any other country. We are doing much better. So it's totally against what is happening in the real scenario. Then CCMB had to put tweets, and also there was another article parallel which was written by someone else saying that there is nothing, and there is no data to suggest that which is dangerous, which is more dangerous, less dangerous. We do not have any such data right now to tell that. So this is how the misinformation just percolates into the system and creates panic all around. So as a last message, I would tell you all that be very vigilant with respect to any message comes to you with respect to coronavirus, or in general with anything. Just Google it for a while. There are lots of information around. You can just tell which is correct, which is wrong in no time. So do not ignore those things. So please take care of those things. And at the end, I would say all this what I have been talking. I have just spoken a very little part of what CCMB has been doing, and all the researchers at CCMB are actually doing. So this is our BSL-3 facility in which the volunteers are actively doing their work, trying to. So they are doing testing inside the BSL-3, and this is a PPE kit which they wear, which is very uncomfortable, but we have to bear with it for quite good amount of time, and we work in negative pressures there actually. Hands off to their dedication and determination to do these things. And whatever we are doing at CCMB, in fact, any other research institute, and most of them are volunteers. They are doing day in and out without even taking breaks. They come it's a routine for them. they're keeping their PhD work aside, they are into this. They just want to put some effort, contribute their bit towards the cause of the nation. And that's what we feel, that as scientists, this is a privilege and opportunity to do something good for the country and nation. And this is the time, if not now, when. So that's why we say this is once in a lifetime opportunity. And I should thank all these warriors who are working in and out behind the screen. And for all of you all, this is a simple message. Right now, there is a huge cry with respect to vaccine. We do not know whether vaccine is going to come in the near future or no. I will before December or no. But one thing is for sure, if you follow these three things, because we have been testing for so long, none of our volunteers are infected. It means if you take good care of yourself while handling samples, while talking to someone, it's not that tricky to avoid this by getting infected by this virus. So I simply call it as keep SMSing, that is sanitize your hands, wear a mask, and follow social distancing. So these three things these are the three important rules which you have to follow. And we are sure these three things will save you for long, and make sure others around you also follow it. So that's an important thing to be followed. So right now, do not think that vaccine is about to come, so it's okay and all. No, it's not the case. Unless the vaccine comes, we do not know how things are going to turn out. Many vaccine candidates are on the way, but how many are going to succeed the trials, how many are not going to succeed the trials, we have no clue about this. So these things, keeping in this mind, I would suggest you all to keep SMSing now and then. And at the end, I would like to thank you all for your patience, and also the organizers for calling me, for inviting me for doing this lecture. And I would be happy to take some questions.
Thank you, sir, for this wonderful section. Now we'll be moving on to Q&A section. Over to you, Amy.
Hi, Santosh. Hope we
Hi.
can move on to the Q&A.
Yeah.
Okay. So the first question is, can you tell us what is the error percentage and what are the chances for false positives during testing?
False positive testing is very rare, and in fact, false negative is a problematic thing. So depending on the person, so if the copy number is so low, you just one copy is there sitting in this. We do not have techniques which can pick it up. So if you go and look at the RT-PCR kit, and one copy number doesn't cause infection, so let's not get that. Too low is also not detectable. But false positive, so any test you take, any diagnosis you take, they can reach up to 90 to 95%. So the same is true with this technique as well. So there will be always two false negatives, but symptoms and all this, you have to put all these things into context. So that's why alternative methods like antibody testing, which is being done very regularly right now. So it complements the system, but however, RT-PCR is the gold standard for all this.
Okay, sir. What are the components of VTM?
So VTM actually, it's a culture medium which is having some. You can also ship the virus in PBS, that is phosphorus buffer saline. Even that will do the job. Why we ship most of the time in VTM is this is for research purpose, because once the virus can stay in this VTM for 3 hours, and it is like any other cell culture medium. You have heard about DMEM medium, right? So it will have the same, more or less same components of all the regular cell culture media, which has some serum, which has some other components in it. So it's just like any other cell culture media. It's not essential, it's not mandatory. There are many other alternatives known. Even PBS will do the job.
Okay. What about the residual proteins from viral capsids? Won't they affect the efficiency of testing?
So in which step are you talking? So there are two ways of, since we are doing a direct RT-PCR, and if you look at what we have developed, are you talking with respect to the new method?
Probably, sir.
Okay. So there are two ways. If you are going with a regular RNA isolation method, in that all the proteins are removed in one shot. So you are specifically isolating RNA. If you look at the new method which we have developed, where there is no RNA isolation step, but there is another step introduced called inactivation, virus inactivation, by heating the entire viral particle at 98 degrees for 6 minutes. So that is essentially denatures all the protein part. So this is what it is. proteins and all, it opens up the virus. That's what we believe. And when you after that we spin it, we give a spin of 1 to 2 minutes. In that, all the denatured protein settles, and whatever the supernatant is there, it will have only the RNA part of it. So I'm just talking about this heat inactivation step at this position. In the general case, it's RNA isolation. Here, it's heat inactivation.
Okay. Are there only advantages or are there any known disadvantages for the new dry swab method compared to the older ones?
So as of now, compared to the older one, it's definitely more or less same. We do not see any disadvantages till now. Actually, we have another way developed. I have not spoken about it. It's an alternative to this. Instead of heat inactivating, in the same, take the T buffer and isolate RNA. The efficiency of the test increases further. So we can only see advantages right now. We have one disadvantage which always can be told is once you collect samples in VTM, the sample is alive, and so we do not know whether this can be used for growing the virus later or no. So T buffer, we do not know. That we are testing right now. So that is still, I cannot comment on it. As of now, we do not see any disadvantage right now.
All right. Can mutations in the PCR target sequences yield false negative results in RT-PCR?
No, that is not going to affect the RT-PCR because even a mutation counts, it's only a 1 or somewhere in between, because the primers are the one which is going to take care, and one mutation does not generally affect the binding of the primer generally, but there might be rare chances, but it's very unlikely to happen in these cases.
Okay. Even though the demand for biotechnology has increased, the pandemic is said to have a devastating effect on the biotechnology industry as well as other labs because the work is only allowed on COVID testing labs. How has COVID-19 affected your work area, sir?
So COVID-19 is not, it doesn't know a person, it doesn't know a field, it doesn't know rich, poor, everyone are equally affected. So we also are affected badly, but there's no other way out. We have to continue. So COVID things have to go on and lab works have to go on. So there is a restricted movement for all of us. We do work with restrictions, but we're slowly trying to. This is the new normal. We do not know how long. We have to get used to it. There is no other way for us.
So true, sir. Okay, next question. Stanford recently recommended self-swabbing COVID test. People can collect their own test samples and it yielded more accurate results. Could you tell about the advantages and disadvantages related to self-swabbing COVID test?
So self-swabbing COVID test, even these swabs, we can collect it ourselves. The problem is, there will be lots of sample variation. When you take a sample, you should know how to take it. One is they talk about saliva as well. So that is what we want to actually pursue in the coming few days. We are trying to do something with saliva. Saliva will be the easiest. You don't need to poke your nose. I'll tell you, it's very disgusting when someone poke your nose with the swab. It's very bad. So it's not a good feeling. So if you imagine if you can develop a test where you can use saliva and start doing things, that would be amazing. That is what we are actually looking forward for. And in fact, in US, they are using saliva, if I'm not wrong. So with respect to Stanford, I think it is still awaiting approvals from the authorities for that test.
Okay. What is a better option in your opinion? A drug for COVID-19 treatment or a vaccine in the future?
Any day vaccine is the better option.
All right, sir. What are your views on the implications of Ayurveda in the fight against COVID-19?
So Ayurveda is something which needs to be tested. So these are all on trial and error methods, which needs to be, unless we do an experiment, it's very tough to comment on these things. So you have to do it. So in the past, antimicrobial has been done for many of the plant extracts and all. So unless we do not know what is going to come up there, but it's worth a try.
Okay. Can you comment on the chances of health complications in people cured from the infection?
Oh, this is something which is an emerging problem right now. At least on my, this is something which few of my contacts whom I know, they have tested positive, and their families. What they say is getting cured is one thing, and later on, after 2-3 weeks, they are having some hypertension problems, someone comes up having some other complications. So it's not going to be easy life. So it's going to be, so there's going to be a tremendous stress on the healthcare system. I don't know how these things. The problem is we do not understand the virus fully because we don't even know what all parts it has reached. There was the other day which report which says that in small kids, children, there's a inflammation of the heart. So we do not know what is the impact and what. So we have a huge variation even in our genomes. So those things have to put into consideration. Right now it's too early to comment, but it does have, looks like the trends say that there is more and more impact on the health condition of an individual. And more importantly, people who are not well right now, not because of COVID, are not going to hospitals because of the COVID fear. Tomorrow, these all guys have to go back again. So their entire health is getting into more and more complications because they cannot approach the system right now.
Okay, sir. What are your views on the acceleration of the process of vaccine production? Also, we know for designing a drug, it takes nearly around 15 years. Now the process is fast forwarded so much. What are your views?
So there are two ways of looking at it. There are a few drugs called repurposing. Repurposing drugs are easier to get into market because repurposing meaning this drug was used for something else. So now we are checking will it work for this. Since that has already passed all the trials with respect to the safety, so it's easier to pass it another time for these. So repurposing is always a better option. Whereas any other thing, we need to follow all the ethical guidelines because we do not know how these things work out later. So the ethical clearances has to be followed irrespective of how much time they take, because safety of the because once we imagine, we say we have a vaccine, we just distribute it indiscriminately to so many people. So it's better we know what all side effects it causes, whether it's inducing immunity, is there any age advantage, sex advantage. So all those things have to be studied thoroughly before we get to anywhere administrating to others.
Okay. As we wait for a vaccine to be developed, what else is the research community doing to attempt to save lives?
So one thing is you have to ramp up the healthcare system. So that governments are actually doing pretty well. They have put up many COVID care centers and all. Other thing is we have to protect our healthcare workers. So because if the healthcare workers are affected, then the entire system will collapse. So those the people who are fighting in the forefront has to be protected. If one of the CSIR labs has actually made PPE kits for using it in India. Initially, India did not have most of the components required for handling this situation, but we have tremendously bounced back and generated most of the stuff, including the kits, including PPE, masks, gloves. Everything was shortage initially, but now we are doing pretty well with respect to those things.
Okay. What can we do as a society to prevent future pandemics? Are wild animals more likely to carry deadly viruses?
So viruses are always with us. It will be there. This is not the first pandemic and the last pandemic which mankind is witnessing. So it's always good to have a good infrastructure, health system. No matter how much health system, people have to follow certain rules and all. So imagine if we follow this social distancing, wearing a mask, so we can reduce quite a bit of it. So that we will not put pressure on the system. And with coming to the wildlife and all, so there is no organism where you can say they do not have a virus. Viruses are everywhere. And we are just realizing its importance more and more because they are affecting our lives more and more now. And there has to be some surveillance systems put in place which keeps monitoring now and then with respect to what is the status of things over there.
All right, sir. What are your views on herd immunity against COVID-19?
This is a very difficult thing, and we do not have any solid evidence yet. So I wouldn't like to comment anything on it.
Okay. One of the participants asked, sir, and as an aspirant to become a researcher, will you comment on your career path?
Okay, you want to know exactly how I have approached, how I have come across? So
maybe your experiences, so she gets some guidance.
Yeah, so I have given my mail ID. You can write back to me anytime. So we also do something called outreach programs that CCMB has started last 1.5 years, 2 years back, for that matter. So we do those things. You can always approach us. That will always be there for you all. With respect to mine, to be frank, I wanted to do MBBS, failed miserably, so opted for BSc in biotechnology, and it's something which you call it as acquired taste, right? Once you start enjoying it, and then there is no looking back. So initially it was not that comfortable, but once I started loving it, it was really good. And then onwards, the day when we joined, and maybe a year or so stuff after that, I realized that I like doing this. So the best part is you're the boss of your experiment. You do your experiment every day, and you do a new experiment every day. That is something which is I enjoy every day on my lab. So something everyone has to actually enjoy. So that is something keeps me moving every day and keeps the enthusiasm. And then onwards, I went and did my MSc, and then come to CCMB, and PhD was very exciting. And actually, my area of research is not COVID and all. So this we have to adapt to the time. My area of research is actually proofreading mechanisms, how cells avoids mistakes in the central dogma. So that maybe some other day we can have the talk. That will be more. I'll be happy to present that.
Sure, sir. Okay. Does asymptomatic COVID-19 also show positive results in RT-PCR?
Yes. Undoubtedly.
Okay. Are there any other methods available other than these RT-PCR and VTM tests right now?
So antibody testing is being done. The problem with antibody testing is after infection, maybe around 10 days, the guy starts developing antibodies. So RT-PCR is the best golden standard till now. There is no better test right now, which can detect the infection very early.